I'm Brian Foster, and this is the Grindhouse Institute. On each episode of this podcast, Jeremy Floyd and I program a triple feature movie night. Each of the movies share common themes, and we discuss them here. We're happy you could join us for today's block we call Horror Anthology 201. To introduce this film block, the Grindhouse Institute once again would like to bring back our head professor on all things anthology, the Ghoul of the Grindhouse. Hello, kiddies. It's your old fiend, the Ghoul of the Grindhouse, here to deliver a deluge of diabolical delicacies and a scintillating set of cinematic snacks. Several sinful strangers on a tour through a creepy catacomb are introduced to a familiar fellow who tells them each a terrifying tale. Are these stories just entertainment? Or are they cautionary tales? Moan Collins and Bleeder Cushing star in Tales from the Crypt from 1972. A young paper boy is invited over for dinner only to find out he is the main course. In order to distract the diabolical diner, the boy must read terrifying tales from a tattered tome. But will that be sufficient to save him from the serving tray? Now that's what I call a dilemma. Deborah Scary, Julianne Gore, and Cleve Buscemi star in 1990's Tales from the Darkside, the movie. He sees you when you're creeping. He knows when you're a snake. So when it comes to Halloween night, all good little boils and ghouls know to follow the rules. Those who don't will surely be slayed a visit by a little trickster who will do more than just TP your house. Anna Hackowin, Diane Cox, and Villain Baker star in Trick or Treat from 2007. Thank you for listening to the Grindhouse Institute. Please enjoy. All right, welcome back to the Grindhouse Institute. I'm Brian Foster, and with me as always is Jeremy Floyd. Hello, and how are you?
Well, I'm sad that Halloween seems to be over, or almost over, or over by the time you're listening to this, I guess.
Yeah, unless we can get this out soon enough.
Yeah.
Probably not. That's quite a turnaround. Today we have a very special episode, another sequel to a previous episode. Today we are going to be talking about horror anthology films again, one of my favorite genres, and watching these films again reminded me of why it's my favorite genre. And today we have a very special guest joining us today. Jeremy, would you mind doing the intro?
Yeah, so we're going through some horror favorites here, and who better to take us through all this than the host of Horror's Hallowed Grounds and the podcast Thing with Two Heads, Sean Clark. Welcome.
Hello. How you doing?
Yeah. Doing
Welcome.
well.
Thank you for joining us today for this discussion. Today we're going to be talking about three films: Tales from the Crypt from 1972, Tales from the Darkside, the movie from 1990, not to be confused with the television series.
Right.
And Trick or Treat from 2007, the Bryan Singer produced legendary horror anthology film.
Why'd you have to ruin it like that?
Perfect. I started this off.
Hardly anybody even knows he produced that.
Well, that's some of his X-Men 2 casts, so there you go.
Oh, Anna Paquin?
And Brian Cox. He was
And Brian Cox was, Stryker.
Yeah.
Yeah, this was another good block. I have seen all these films before, but seeing them again, especially Tales from the Crypt from the 70s, which I remember as a kid thinking was so boring or something. I wasn't interested in it at all. And now I was like, this was amazing. It was it was well done, and probably my favorite of the three that we watched today.
And I have to admit, I haven't ever seen.
This is one you have to see, especially if you have seen Tales from the Darkside. If you've seen Tales from the Crypt on HBO, this is a good one to see too, because one of the episodes in it, and All Through the House, was actually remade for the HBO version that was in this one, the one with Joan Collins.
Yeah.
I think I own it. Let me see.
Yeah. That was definitely one of my favorite episodes. What do you call it? Vignettes?
Yeah, I'd have to say of the vignettes, Poetic Justice took it all for me. The Peter Cushing, mostly because I basically ended up started crying when he started getting screwed with so bad from that prick. Yeah, it just ruined me. When he started getting all the poetry and the Valentine's letters, I was going to lose it. I had to turn it off for a second.
Well, maybe you should save that one for last. That way I can bow out just before you get to that one, and you don't ruin the movie for me.
Oh, yeah, we won't get too far into it. I do want to talk about format, though, for all of these. We talk about format in these anthology films a lot, especially when it comes to the spine or the wrapper or the wraparound. I believe even in Tales from the Crypt in the credits, they called it the wraparound, with the Crypt Keeper, who was just an old man that was basically guarding the gates of hell, which kind of comes out of nowhere. It's such a cool opening and so like dreamy. But Tales from the Darkside has a version of it with this, I guess Hansel and Gretel meets 1001 Nights, or like it's got kind of
Blondie.
With Blondie, exactly. Deborah
Harry.
Harry. Let's get into this. Like the casting of this movie was awesome, and Deborah Harry to come out of nowhere as a witch. And she's so sweet, and everybody loves her in the town, clearly, because the priest like yells at her. He's like, "Come on, we'll see you on Sunday."
Yeah.
And she's, okay. And then, lo and behold, she's got an oven the size of a small child. So she can slide an entire kid as well as herself in there. So, yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts on Tales from the Darkside, Sean, if you can. I mean, we will definitely skip past Tales right now. Tales from the Crypt.
I'm a big fan of that film. I'd have to say my favorite story in that one would be, was it called Lover's Vow? Is that James Remar, Ray Don Chong?
Oh, yeah.
The gargoyle.
Yeah. I was just with Remar this weekend at Monster Mania in Oaks, Pennsylvania. And
right on.
I was talking to my girlfriend about that. She hasn't seen that movie. And I was saying, oh, you got to at least see that episode, because I knew she would like that episode.
He's great in it, too.
Yeah.
Why did you tell me that?
Oh man, when she turns on him, I was like, "You're done, man."
Yeah.
And I've seen this
promised.
movie. I've seen it so many times, and still, when he told her, I still was pissed off. I'm like, "It's been 10 years, man. Just let it go. You're fine." Kids are growing up fine and everything, and then all that had to turn to shit. But yeah, I thought that this one was one of my favorites. I loved all the stories in this one, but Cat from Hell obviously was special in my mind, not just because George Romero wrote it. But also because David Johansen, the lead singer of the New York Dolls, is the assassin in it, the hitman.
Wait, are you talking about the cabbie from Scrooged?
Exactly, yeah.
Go back to Jersey, you moron!
He's a very underrated actor. I mean,
Absolutely.
He was so good in Scrooged. He was so good in Tales.
Yeah.
I'm really surprised we didn't see more of him over the years acting, because I've always. He's got a great look. He's got a great voice.
Yeah. Very
He's
gravelly.
got that New York. He's got that classic gruff New York.
Plus, he's playing a completely different character than he did in Scrooged in this one. I mean, he's very polished, dressed. He actually feels like an assassin or a hitman in the mafia or wherever he's from. But I love his little bag of tricks he's got, to kill the cat. He's got an entire briefcase full of things, and he's playing with the Garrote wire and all that. I just love that shit. Garrote. Tarot cards. Yeah.
And what is the other one? What was the one? It was called Lot
249.
Lot 249. The
249.
Sir Arthur Conan Doyle story. Yeah.
An all-star cast on that one.
Yeah. I mean, that one's probably the weakest, but I always love that mummy design. I thought that K&B did a great job on the look of the mummy.
Yeah, and they give some really good close-ups of it, and they do some really nice dollies past it and just kind of tease the look of it for a while until finally it's, ripping a brain out of a man's nose.
Yeah.
But, it is a great... That's a great one, and it, like you said, Jeremy, it's an all-star cast in that one with Steve Buscemi, Julianne Moore, Christian Slater. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean, at the time, I guess only Christian Slater was sort of known out of the bunch there, but...
Don't forget Mike Deek as the mummy.
Oh, right.
He's done a lot of suit stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, he was the cellar dweller. I mean, I think he was also the gargoyle in that one as well. I think he was,
interesting.
They had him in the suit.
Yeah, he's a suit guy.
So he's I'm sorry, who's Guillermo del Toro's?
Doug Jones.
Doug Jones. He was Doug Jones before Doug Jones, huh?
Yeah. He's an effects guy, actually. He works, so he ends up getting put in the suit a lot because I guess he's a big guy, like tall and
kind of lanky.
Yeah.
I mean, you brought up K&B effects. I thought that the gargoyle was one of the best effects, and I still think it goes down as one of the best animatronics. It actually looks like it's talking. It looks like it's there. No longer are we seeing 90s CG now that might have looked good back then. They did a real prosthetic. They did a real animatronic. So, you know, it's going to hold up and for all those years.
And that was right when K&B kind of started. You know, that was one of their first, you know, early gigs.
Yeah.
So.
This is even before Reservoir Dogs, when they really popped and you know, became the household name for special makeup effects and gore.
Because they all did Evil Dead 2, but they hadn't formed their own company yet or something.
It was just like Greg Nicotero and Howard Berger floating around as makeup guys.
They were all mostly working for Mark Sjostrom at the time when they did Evil Dead 2.
Yeah, because I think he's credited for the makeup.
Yeah, well, I think part of the reason you feel like, you know, it's the weakest of the stories is Lot 249, that is because, you know, the end of it, like, you're like, oh, Christian Slater's going to get his revenge. He's going to set him on fire. He's going to do this whole thing. And then he doesn't do it. And you're like, okay, well, why?
He couldn't bring himself to do it,
he
even
just
after
killed
his
sister
best
and
friend.
best friend.
Yeah. And he says that several times.
It kind of seems like it'd be pretty easy to outrun, you know. But,
although the sister and the brother, or the best friend, when they came back at the end there, they were moving pretty quick, or at least came around the corner pretty quick. Maybe they, you know, a younger mummy, they were, you know, less than 3,000 years. They got some speed on the old wrapped up bag of bones.
Right. They definitely had a little Ted Danson and Creep Show coming back type of thing.
I was going to bring that up. Okay.
Yeah.
Didn't you feel that this, I mean, was originally going to be another Creep Show? You know, that was the idea in development, and it was going to be part 3, and Romero was attached again and all that. But that ending had me going from something to tide you over. You know, the Ted Danson, Leslie Nielsen Creep Show ending. I mean, it was the same kind of look. We're right here, Richard.
what do you think? Do you think what do you think's a better movie? Do you think Tales or Creep Show 2 is the better? Do you think?
I mean, I'm going to say Tales from the Darkside is better than Creep Show 2, although Creep Show 2 holds a very special place in my heart.
Yeah, Creep Show 2 has a lot of cheese in it, but I mean, it's got some great stuff. I mean, the raft episode.
The raft is awesome. The raft is amazing.
Favorite.
I mean, you just throw a tarp in the water and make it scary. You know you're doing something right.
Yeah.
Well, I love the short story, The Raft. I've actually never seen Creep Show 2.
We'll have to put that one on here.
We'll have to do that next time.
Creep Show 2, I think we need to put the new VHS movies that are on. I think a brand new one dropped recently, but the VHS are supposed to be very good. I haven't seen them yet, so I'm looking forward to Horror Anthology 301.
Have you seen Tales of Halloween?
No, not yet.
Oh, you should definitely check out Tales of Halloween. It's I'm in it, not just because I'm in it. But,
cool.
Right on.
But it's got a really good cast. It's many short stories in one film, and it has a wraparound, like not so much a wraparound, but there's a connective piece that it's basically Adrienne Barbeau reprising her Stevie Wayne character as a radio.
I love it. From The Fog?
Yeah. But it's really cool. There's a lot of good directors attached to it. Mike Mendez, Dave Parker, Axel Carroll,
Eight-Legged Freaks. Oh, and she's doing all the American Horror Stories now. XL.
Yeah. Who else is on there? Oh, Andrew Cash, my buddy, did one with oh God, what's his name? It was Skip Inspector, the Splatterpunk guys. It was I can't remember Skip's last name. Anyway. He did it with him, and then who else? There's a bunch of directors attached to it. I think you'd really enjoy it. It's fun. It's a lot of fun.
I'll remember that one.
But there's like 8 stories or something. They're shorter.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah. When did that one come out?
2015 maybe
ish.
Okay.
Something like that.
Okay.
Are you going to spoil what your role was, or do you want us to?
I'm in the episode called something about war. Shit, I can't remember the name of the episode. This is war.
Okay.
This is
war.
This means war, or this is war. And it stars James Duvall and the comedian Dana
Gould.
Dana Gould. And
he's awesome.
Basically, it's about that episode is an old school Halloween guy who decorates his house every year. He's like the guy in the neighborhood, when then this new school guy moves across the street who's more, he's more vintage, like Universal monster style, and the new guy's more like Saw and gory, and they basically are trying to outdo each other.
Oh, that's a great story.
It turns into a fight where they actually try to kill one another. And
I love it.
I play one of James Duvall's friends that's just hanging out there. I don't have any lines, but you see me a lot.
That's cool.
So a lot of people come up to me and go, "Hey, you were in Tales of Halloween." It surprises me. I'm like, yeah.
That's awesome.
I'll have to check that one out.
Yeah.
So, Jeremy, was this the first time of seeing all of these, or just a few of them?
I had seen Tales from the Darkside, but not any of the other two.
I'd love your thoughts on Tales from the Darkside.
Yeah, so I mean, I hadn't seen it since I was a kid, so a lot of it was excised from the memory. And I totally forgot about all the cast in this. I forgot about the the twist at the end of Lover's Vow, like you're saying, Sean. So it felt very fresh to me, even though I had seen it a long time ago. It was interesting because this, you could totally see the sort of, okay, there's a little Stephen King, a little George Romero in here, and every time someone was watching TV, they're watching Dawn, I think, at one point, and then they're watching Martin toward the end.
Martin was on, good call.
And so there's a lot of Romero Easter eggs, I guess.
Sure, yeah.
And then wasn't John Harrison? Didn't he do a lot of music for?
He's the one that directed Dune.
Yeah, too.
Yeah,
right.
The miniseries. But he did the music for Creep Show and for Day of the Dead and that sort of stuff.
Right. Okay.
And Tales.
I don't know if he did.
He did Tales. Yeah.
Oh, he did. Yeah.
I mean, he directed it and did the music, right?
You could tell it was in that. I guess early 90s, late 80s, John Harrison synthy score, except for the main score. That was a little bit more symphonic, but everything else was a little bit more on the synthy side.
I'd say the Creep Show score is one of my all-time favorite scores.
Oh, yeah, hands down.
Yeah.
That's one that I put on in the car when I'm driving.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Every Halloween, I put that one on.
Yeah, it's great. Everything about that movie is basically perfect. And if I could have, I would have just watched that one again and talked about it again on this episode, to be honest.
Yeah.
We talked about that one on the last episode.
But I love in the Cat from Hell how they have the librarian from Ghostbusters in it.
Coughing. Yeah.
And the whatever General Sternwood guy he's got the big sleep. He's got the little blanket over his legs, and he's in his wheelchair.
Oh yeah, that's Dr. Finkelstein from Nightmare Before Christmas.
Yeah, exactly. And Uncle Leo or whatever in Christmas Vacation.
Yeah. Was it Leo?
Uncle Lewis. Sorry, Uncle Lewis.
Get my stogie.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's him. Yeah. What's the actor's name? It's
William Hickey.
William Hickey. Yeah. I would have loved to have met him. Never met him.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. So we each know who it is we're dealing with. Why don't you tell me the rest of the story about that cat?
The cat killed them. I warned them, but they wouldn't listen. They found out.
As much as I kind of enjoyed most of Lot 249, I think for me the ending was a little, it fell a little short. I think I agree with you, Sean. The Lover's Vow is probably the strongest one for me in there, because it gets you going, and then at a certain point you're like, well, where are we going to this? And and you keep waiting for that other shoe to drop, and it finally does. Plus,
that one's got the gooeyest effects in it. The guy getting his face slashed off at the beginning, and his arm getting ripped off, and then it like bookends with just great sticky gore, and I love it.
And how bad do you feel for that bartender who just
awful, man? That guy was just giving somebody a ride home. I'm gonna walk you home.
Plus, it's the one of all of them that doesn't have any kind of goofiness. They all have some silliness.
Yeah,
it's right. The one that's pretty serious.
Yeah, I agree.
That's a good,
because even
a good call.
Cat from Hell, although it's dark the whole time, literally dark, like it's a very darkly lit episode. Yeah. It's almost like they did it in a black box theater with just a bit of furniture here and there. But even though it was like it still was a little bit more like hijinksy. I don't know what that,
like
it was
humor and
it was cat and mouse,
like
right? It was
and,
yeah,
cat and hitman, right?
A Tom and Jerry kind of feel,
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, and of course Lot 249 and the sort of, wraparound bookend stories. All the rest of those, so all four of those, or all three of those I should say, are pretty campy. And then you're right, Sean, Lover's Vow has a lot more of a taking this seriously as a horror story.
And that's actually based on, I think, partially on Japanese mythology, the yokai that can become human until, when it finds a lover, and then when it no longer has that lover, or when a promise is broken, things like that, they, again, become the creature that they once were. They can't live a life as a human, So it was interesting. It's kind of a combination of things. And then the gargoyles themselves. Gargoyles, I think, are really cool to begin with. I was a big fan of the animated Gargoyle show back in the day.
Yeah. Well, Keith David, I think he was the main voice.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that was a great show. And then the legend and the mythology behind it is neat. And then to see it in a nice little snackable horror presentation is also cool.
No, totally.
What's wrong? I'm not making this up. I'm telling you the truth.
You promised you'd never tell!
Yeah, I mean, as far as, the way that anthology films work, you're often at the whim of what is that anchor? What is the wrapper, like, and in something like Creepshow, well, it was just they would cut to a comic book and then move back and forth between different stories, and then kind of it was
they had the kid and his dad.
bookends.
Oh yeah,
But what I'm saying is, like, you never come back to it, right? And in this one, like, there's either at least in theory advancing the plot by this kid trying to save himself, and like so in itself it becomes a story, right?
Yeah.
What's so interesting about Trick or Treat though is that it's not really an anthology film. It's actually it's kind of like it's an ensemble film.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's sort of like I don't know what, Robert Altman or something. It's like Shortcuts, right? It's like Nashville or something.
Sort of how Tarantino-esque, and how he weaves things together.
Yeah, exactly. Especially because it is edited out of order too, right? Yeah. Like it plays. You see the ending at the beginning and the beginning at the end. With the couple. And the only thing really tying everything together is Sam, the little pumpkin kid, jack-o'-lantern spirit, I guess he is, the spirit of Halloween.
Yeah. It's a real shame that this movie didn't get the release it deserved. I mean, because I saw it, they had a special screening of it at a film festival in LA called Scarefest, and I went to that. It was like the premiere.
Yeah.
And everybody was just blown away, and we were all like, wow, this is going to be the next big thing. And then it sat for a couple of years. They didn't release it, and it didn't get a theatrical, and it went straight to DVD, and they didn't promote it. And it was such a shame because it's such a great movie, and now it's finally finding its audience. I mean, you go to Spirit Halloween, and half the store is trick-or-treat merchandise,
Yeah.
And it's a real bummer that it didn't get it should have been a bigger movie.
I agree. It's got all the pieces of one of those repeatable Halloween or scary movie time kind of movies. This is a repeatable one easily. I hadn't seen it in a while, but I had seen it a couple times before, and every time I see it, it feels fresh. It feels new. And then I forgot about the werewolf. I forgot all about that with Anna Paquin. I'm like, how does this one resolve? And then all of a sudden I like got it when Dylan Baker falls out of the tree, all mangled. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's what happens. And then all hell breaks loose.
And what a cool transformation. The way the skin, they shed the skin.
And they just kind of rip it off and throw it away.
Kind of like the gargoyle, how it came out of Ray Don Chong. It was very similar. It's almost like the monster's living inside the person, like kind of tucked out, and then it releases from this cocoon. It's pretty gross.
But again, it's not, like you said, it's not a traditional anthology, but you have the different stories. You have the opening story of the couple decorating, then you got the Dylan Baker, the check your candy segment.
Classic mythology from Halloween too.
Then you got the werewolf segment. Then you got the school bus tragedy segment and the old man in the house. So it's great how they tie them all together, especially.
And he's the driver, the old man, the driver of the bus. He's Krieg.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So at the very end, I had that question that, and we're supposed to understand that because he burned that picture.
They show a picture, yeah, exactly, and it's him.
He like was throwing it away.
Kids. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think it was. It's one of those things that wasn't necessary. If you missed it, it didn't take anything away. But if you did catch it, it was like, but it wasn't something that if you didn't catch that, it didn't work. It still worked.
Because the main idea of the film is that if people are breaking those traditions for Halloween night, that's when they're attacked, or that's when the spirit will get them. And you think that, he was breaking all the traditions. He was just a jerk on Halloween and wasn't giving kids candy. But then there's that extra layer that they just lay on at the end, that he was the bus driver that caused that horrific accident with the children in the bus.
It's got to follow the rules.
Well, it's not that it's not that he just accidentally caused it. Like, he was like hired to be the kid's hitman or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. He took some money and agreed to it. I think that's how they put stuff like that. I was like, gee.
Yeah. I'm guessing, what were they supposed to be? They were supposed to be special. Well, I mean, they never really said
they
what
didn't
they
come
were.
out and say it, but that is what it sounded like. That they're supposed to be special needs or autistic or whatever it was. Mm-hmm. But the way they put it was something like, well, we'll insert the clip here.
There were 8 of them, and they were different, troubled, disturbed.
But like the way they put it was something along the lines of like, they were special was one of them, but then it was also like...
savant was used to describe the girl that was with them.
The one who was carving all the pumpkins?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, because with that one too, like, they were like, well, how do we describe her? And they wanted to say the R word, but then it just became like, no, she's a savant or something.
Mm-hmm. Is that Rhonda the retard? She's not a retard. She's an idiot savant. Here she comes.
And then on the bus, it was... as they were telling it in the flashback story, they say something where it's like, they're kind of, cretinous or crazy or something. So that was the part where I was like, oh, maybe like it's like, they're all just a bunch of Michael Myers. Like we don't know, you know what I mean? It's like, that's what it seemed like they were going for. But then when we saw them there, well, it was more clear that they were, were special needs or whatever versus, disturbed.
That's a hard. Yeah, was that what they used? Disturbed? That sounds about right. That one made me feel awful watching that whole beginning scene of those kids on the bus, and the one kid's like, he kept saying wrong way, and I was like, oh God, no.
No, totally, and it's also it's funny because like the movie was very much like a series of like rug pulls, and it was there for the audience's benefit, more so than a narrative one, the perfect example for me is when the Dylan Baker, like the principal, he lures that kid in with the candy that makes him, throw up like it's Stand By Me. It's
exactly like Stand By Me.
His entire guts are just like spilling all over his
chocolate
over his
throw
steps.
up, yeah.
And then he gets him, he's like burying the body or whatever. His son is like, what are you doing down there? And he's like, oh, he keeps feeling like he's going to get caught, right? And he keeps like trying to give excuses to his kid. And then we get down to the basement, and it seems like, okay, is he going to stab the kid in the head? No, he stabs the severed head of his victim or whatever, and like they're just going to mutilate this thing together.
They were carving a human as opposed to a pumpkin.
Right. But like in the reality of what this was, it didn't quite work in the sense that like, why would he be hiding it from the kid in the first place and feel like he's got to like, oh no, I'm caught, right? It's like
I see.
It only kind of worked as a rug pull for the audience, you know
right?
What I'm saying?
Exactly. Yeah.
And same with the sort of idiot savant or whatever they ended up calling our kid, who is like, oh wait, she's the ugly girl because she has glasses, and then she loses her glasses, and all of a sudden she's this witch who's in charge of everything.
It was kind of cute.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like that She's All That movie.
Yeah.
She only needed
Yeah.
She looked good with glasses, actually. I was like, this movie's not working for me right now. Yeah. No, I totally agree.
It's crazy to think that the kid that played Sam is now like 21.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I didn't even realize how long ago this movie did come out. I mean, It looked like it was completed in 06 or 05, and then the release wasn't until 07, I think.
Yeah. Quinn Lord, who played Sam, he actually appears in the movie as himself. He's the little kid peeking in the dressing room with the sucker.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, cool.
That's
Right
the
on.
kid that plays Sam.
It's what we do every Halloween, Lori.
Whatever happened to trick-or-treating?
Puberty.
Last year we were in Tampa, and we went to Sexy Nurses. Ladies, there are children out here.
Ladies, there are children present.
Yeah.
It's like, they are in the dressing room.
Yeah.
Take it.
They were
Where
doing
else are they
something
going to
wrong.
go?
What the hell? Yeah, exactly. Oh my god.
Lori, come on out.
No.
Come on, seriously, open up.
Fine, just don't laugh, okay?
Well, I feel like there was a bunch of Easter eggs or whatever. It's just like, it's like the Anna Paquin character's name was Lori, and there was that the pumpkin guy Sam, like crawling on the ceiling like The Exorcist 3 or something. It's like I was catching a bunch in this one. Like they were.
Well, I know Michael Dougherty is a massive horror nerd, so
yeah,
I have no doubt he
couldn't tell. Yeah.
Well, what's funny is just a couple weeks ago he invited us over to his office. We were doing this Halloween signing near his office, and we went over I brought the Halloween cast, like Nick Castle and some,
nice.
To his office, and and he was nerding out and having them sign stuff and taking pictures, and he's a really nice guy. I like Michael a lot. He's just
awesome.
he's a big fan.
What else has he been doing since this stuff? I know the Godzilla movies?
King of the Monsters. He did Krampus.
Yeah. I think that's an underrated movie.
Oh yeah. And I don't know what he told me what he was working on right now. I asked him about Trick or Treat 2 because that was announced at one point.
Yeah.
And he said it's still a possibility. So
I mean, I would love to see a sequel to this. I would love for them to continue it somehow. I know that they came out with some extra content, like animated stuff that was, with the trademark of Trick or Treat, but there hasn't been anything full length. And I think that would be, just really great to, like, they've have a remake of Twilight Zone, that was just recent and it was popular for a while. So, I mean, this might be the right time for something like this.
Well, the interesting thing is, like I was saying about how popular it's kind of become recently with all this merchandise and everything. It seems like right now would be the perfect time for a sequel, just like Killer Clowns is suddenly hot again. Why is there no sequel? Why is there no series or something?
Back in the day, I thought I was the only person in the world that had seen Killer Clowns from Outer Space. And now it's everywhere. Like, you see T-shirts and all this stuff. I'm just like, wow.
I think with Trick or Treat, interestingly enough, to kind of tie it in a little bit to Tales, you got a lot of, we were talking about Tales from the Darkside being Creepshow 3, but you got a lot of Creepshow in this one, with like the comic book interstitials and all that kind of stuff, even though it's not, I don't know, technically an anthology. But then again, I mean, part of that is like to make this thing more of a cohesive narrative. And I wonder if, like, especially around the time it was made, I know anthologies were definitely not seen as moneymakers at that time. But if that was the case, and if like those are the forces they were like up against to make Trick or Treat, then I feel like they did a great job of like kind of having both, and like having it be a standalone movie with everything's kind of connected and kind of the Robert Altman style, like I was mentioning earlier, and then also kind of being in that tradition of horror anthologies of Creepshow and everything else.
I think Michael Dougherty purposely made an anthology that it was disguised as a non-anthology. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because the studios don't want anthology films. So I think he figured out a way to do it. But then he ended up paying the price.
Right.
He didn't follow the rules. So
right, exactly.
The studio Sams put the kibosh on it for a while.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's a real shame because with distribution, I think this could have been a big fun hit in the movie theaters for sure.
Oh yeah, for sure. It was such a fun movie to see with an audience. I had such a blast seeing it for the first time with an audience, and nobody had seen it. We were all just like It was kind of a magical moment. I really thought, wow, this guy is gonna go places, and he has. I mean, he has it, but he should have.
Has a career and all that. Yeah,
should have had a much bigger, quicker rise.
Mm-hmm. But I think, like you were saying a minute ago, and or hinting at it a minute ago, like, the way to get things off the ground right now is to have it be pre-branded IP, as they say, and this already has a built-in audience, which is what they're always looking for. It has, that, very marketable Sam, the monster. And like you're saying, there's already kind of like a level of merch that they're at. So it seems like it's a prime time to get number 2 off the ground.
Yeah, this small film that only came out on DVD, not a wide release, and all of a sudden it's taken over Halloween stores. Whenever they open up those temporary stores, you see the large cutouts of Sam that you put out in your front yard, like as a decoration. You've got the masks, you've got all that stuff. It's just like, it's wild. And he's just a tiny little character in the movie, right? I mean, he's an important character in the movie, but it's also a smaller movie, and it's just one guy, but it's a popular image now. There he is.
Nice.
Man, that's another great animatronic. I mean, and it kind of reminded me of the way that the mouth moved and stuff with the gargoyle. Like, these movies definitely like touched on similar things, and the fact that they used practical in this, even being a more recent film for especially for this podcast, they didn't use all CG, which I thought was good.
Yeah, a friend of mine actually owns that head.
Come on.
The Sam head?
Yeah.
Wow, that's cool.
He offered it to me in a trade, but I'm not doing it. As much as I want to own it, I'm not trading what he wants. So,
what can you say what the trade's for?
He wanted. Now, mind you, it wasn't that head wasn't the only thing he was offering. He was offering a couple items. That was one of the items, but it was for my James Remar screen used Warriors vest, belt, and belt buckle. Yeah, sorry.
You're keeping that.
Keeping the Warriors over that.
That's great that we have another Remar reference here. That just
For the folks at home, Sean's room here is just littered with tons and tons of great tchotchkes and all kinds of great stuff.
I've been so distracted trying to find out what all those things were. I'm like, I want, especially that goat head. That is
definitely
just
a collector. Oh, here we go.
Holy shit!
Yeah,
there's some
endless DVDs and
there,
Funko Pops, and
I'm moving my monitor around here so you can see some of the stuff.
That's very impressive.
It's kind of bonkers in here. Yeah, it's almost overwhelming when I start looking at it all. I start to get anxiety. I've got all this. Look at all these records on the floor, stacks of records down here. I don't have room to put them away. I gotta. It's kind of a sickness.
Well, Sean, thank you very much for joining us today. Where can the audience follow you and find you?
Well, on social media, on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube, it's at Malfunction, which is MALFUNCSEAN. So it's basically the word malfunction. Get rid of the TION and add SEAN, which is my name. It's very clever, but yet not that clever when you're trying to get people to follow you.
When it's voice only, exactly. Yeah. We'll put links in. So
on Facebook, my personal account has been filled up forever, so I had to start one of those stupid fan accounts, which seems very pretentious, but it's facebook.com/Sean Clark Official.
Ooh,
yeah. So it's really official. Because so many people are impersonating me. It's getting ridiculous, especially since Netflix coined me horror expert, And if Netflix says I'm a horror expert, it's got to be true.
Yeah, exactly.
They're the authority on horror, so.
Yeah. Have you guys seen that yet? The movies that made us?
I watched the Halloween one, and maybe RoboCop.
I'm interviewed in Halloween, Nightmare on Elm Street, and Friday the 13th.
Nice.
And then I worked on the Aliens one. I helped get some of the people, and in fact, James Remar did the interview in my living room.
Oh, that's excellent.
You see this really neat staircase he's sitting next to. It's literally right around the corner here.
Nice.
Yeah.
Oh, well, thank you very much.
And next time, I promise to watch all the movies.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, this is great.
You caught me at my busiest time of the year. I was just
dude, I figured
going nuts.
I'm really glad you're able to squeeze you in even though I know it's like you said, your busiest season. But yeah, thanks a lot for joining.
Let's do this again, please.
Absolutely, I'm down. Let me know.
All right, take care.
Brother.
Thank you.
See you guys.
Bye.
Ciao.
So let's discuss Tales from the Crypt real quick.
Yeah, let's do it.
And I know I keep bringing up formats and things like that, but this one was an anthology to a T, right? Like if you're gonna explain what an anthology film is to someone, this is kind of a, I don't know what they call it, a boilerplate or a template for it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because you've got your you meet all of your people that you're going to be following. They're on some sort of a strange tour to a cemetery, through a cemetery, and end up in catacombs. And it's just 5 folks that are, like in this room with the Crypt Keeper, who is definitely not the John Kazar Crypt Keeper from the HBO version, although he would have been hilarious in this.
The guy looked like, I don't know, kind of a monk or something versus the pun spewing rotting corpse.
Which is more accurate to the comics, the old EC comics. He was a human being in those comics, and it was just an older man that would wear a hood. He looked actually more like the Vault Keeper. So there was Tales from the Crypt from EC, Vault of Horror.
Vault of Horror, right.
And then there was Haunt of Fear, and then Crime Suspense Stories. And
yeah, the DVD had Tales from the Crypt and Vault of Horror, like as a dual disc or whatever. And I think that's what Sean pulled up when he was digging through his DVDs for it. But anyway.
Yeah, it's like split in half, right?
Yeah,
on the cover. Yeah. So I haven't seen Vault of Horror yet, but definitely after watching this, I'd like to see it. But
totally. Well, we'll have Anthology 301. So
exactly. I was going to say we don't have any more shows, so we're not going to be able to do it. This is the last one.
Yeah.
But I wanted to bring up some of the episodes in here. Obviously, I brought up originally And All Through the House. With Joan Collins. I thought that was a great one, very scary.
Christmas horror.
Exactly. Christmas horror is such a, I guess, the juxtaposition between and the way that it was shot, it was so bright and beautiful and white in her house, but there was just all this carnage happening.
Bright. I wouldn't say the house decorations were beautiful in any way.
I guess it was clean.
Design was a little.
It was clean. It was modern for 1972. Clean. Yeah.
No, but the direction in that was so awesome. I think that was one of my favorite ones just because of like the thrilling aspects of it.
Mm-hmm.
I guess we should say in the introduction, we kind of like see these people taking a tour through these old catacombs and somewhere in rural England. And they're like, don't get lost. And like this group, Joan Collins drops her brooch, right? And then
very key item, yeah.
Yep. And then they all like stop and, okay, let's see if we can catch up with the group. Is it this way? Let's try this way. And then they, get stuck in with the Crypt Keeper. And then all of a sudden the Crypt Keeper starts, talking them through their stories. And in this first one, it was an All Through the House. It was this guy who's like, writes a love letter to his wife and puts this like this present under the tree, goes to sit down and have a brandy by the fire, and then puts his paper up, and all of a sudden blood hits the paper.
Wasn't that great?
Yeah,
that was
exactly.
great.
That's kind of what I was getting at. Was like the perspective and the way that we're taken through that journey is really fascinating. It's like
how she's under the window looking up, and the psychotic is looking at her. Yeah,
right. The psychotic Santa, and like, right when it starts, and so she takes this guy out, and he drags him all over the carpet with the 3M stage blood, and it's bright neon orange, and then like, you think, okay, aha, we found the villain in this one, and like we found sort of the bad guy, and like, and then we find out that there's a kid upstairs, and she's trying to keep the kid up there, and like, and then we hear on the radio that no, there's someone else on the loose, and it's a psychotic Santa, and then we see the psychotic Santa like coming up through the house, and like we're kind of seeing the almost
Black Christmas
like point of view, and so she knows to beware, and then she's like locks the hell out of the door and like throws the shutters closed on one window, but then there's like tons of other windows. But what was so cool is like when she like found out that there was somebody out there, we're definitely from her perspective, and it does that very, very particular Hitchcock thing where you're able to shift perspective of like, oh no, now you're rooting for Norman Bates. Is he going to get the car to go down? You know? And like you want her to like finish cleaning up the thing and not have the kid find out, and oh wait, and then there's another stalker coming, and like you were saying, like the camera's really low and she's having to dive underneath these windows to like maneuver her way around the room, and just the filmmaking alone on that short film was fantastic. I mean, it really is how to tell a story, because we get all these beats, and the kid upstairs not only has this sort of like icky emotional resonance, but also lets in the sort of the sort of vampire
He's
bad
here!
guy. Yeah, it's like Santa's here, and it's like, and that's like a total payoff, and everything about it like works so well, and like her sort of like planting the body in the basement. And
the way that guy falls down the stairs is brutal.
Oh my god!
What stunt guy pulled that off? And I hope he made it.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
He takes a bounce off one of those stairs from his head. I was like, dude.
Hopefully,
get that in one shot.
Less takes than David Fincher or something. But
come on, let's do it again. Yeah. Are we ready?
All right, everybody, back to one. Oh, my back.
What's a one?
How many fingers am I holding up? Oh, you're good. Get up there. But like the whole short film on that one was just like was so good, and it's so well done, and like, and you get every beat, and it was perfectly paced, and your loyalties as the audience are kind of switching. You're like, oh no, she's evil for killing her husband who was giving her that nice Christmas present, writing her that sweet letter or whatever, and then all of a sudden you're like, wait, I want to make sure that she gets the body down there, and then you're like, no, make sure the daughter stays up there. You know what I mean? Like it really manipulates your emotions so well, and like in the filmmaking so great. Anyway, I feel like that was such an interesting story.
Yes,
and then we get back to the spine,
right?
And what's so cool is like she's like fingering the brooch, and the brooch was the present that her husband had, and you're like, oh, okay, wait, so this already happened, and then but she died in it, and then like so you're not sure, and the movie doesn't let you think about it too long, and then we move on to the next one.
Right on to the next one.
And what was the next one? Was it the?
That was when the gentleman was going to cheat on or leave his wife and his daughter.
Yes.
And he goes to meet up with his mistress, and he sees himself as a ghoul or whatever. And
that one had a little Dead of Night, the British Dead of Night.
Oh yeah. See, I think overall, consistency-wise, this one had the most consistent quality across all of the stories. Tales from the Darkside is a little lacking in the first episode probably, but I think they're all good. But I think this one, they all balance out really well. And now it makes me think that more stories in an anthology, tighten those stories up even more, make them quicker and even more snackable than they already are, might improve, the storytelling of each of those vignettes.
And because the spine pieces were so tight, most of the times we'd cut back and be like, we'd only be there for
two lines,
and we're back into another story. I mean, I guess there was a point where like I feel like toward the end it was maybe in between the guy who died after the Death Rides a Motorcycle one,
the wish, that was the monkey's paw.
The monkey's paw. So like between the monkey's paw and sort of the last one, which is the blind alley, I remember like we're getting back to the spine. I was like, okay, what are we doing here? What is this thing? We've pushed this one a little too far. There's such thin gruel in between. You sit down. Now it's your turn. It's like that thing. But other than that, I feel like structure wise, it was so well structured. And then the ending, which I think we'll get to in a minute, pays off so well.
Yeah.
But going back a second, I think what we had touched on a minute ago with Sean, we were talking about like sort of the morality plays that oftentimes these snackable like EC Comics, Creep Show, Tales from the Crypt, do so well. Tales from the Crypt TV show, I meant, like do so well is like that they always have like someone the audience just really hates, and like, you set them up as a bad guy, and then like horrible things happen to them. The horrifying things happen to them, and that is definitely the case with this one, with Reflections of Death. And
definitely with Blind Justice, or he's like, Blind whatever it's called.
Oh yeah, and Poetic Justice.
Same.
Oh god,
a lot of comeuppance in
this. I mean, in that sense, like kind of like Wish You Were Here is a little off kilter. That's the Monkey's Paw one, but I think we'll get to that in a second. But in Reflections of Death, like it's this guy. He's like, oh, I'm gonna go. I'm taking off for a business trip, and then like. Like, hey, make sure to go kiss the kids goodbye. And he's like, yeah. And he's like, I don't want to do it because I don't want to feel bad. Well, okay, I'll just go up and do it anyway and steel myself against this. And like, then he goes and he goes on his trip, quote unquote, and it turns out he's just leaving with his mistress to go live somewhere else. Mm-hmm. We don't quite know where. And he's like falling asleep at the wheel. They get in an accident. He somehow survives this crazy, crazy accident, and
with a miniature car.
Yeah.
It flies over the hill, yeah.
And then, we keep seeing it from the perspective shot, mm-hmm. right? It was all POV. And unlike Lady in the Lake or what was that more recent movie, Hardcore Henry or something, like, Lady in the Lake in particular, because it's such an old movie, and it's very, the entire thing is POV. Like it becomes like it's too much to take. But because they only did this for, I don't know what, 2 minutes out of the entire movie, it actually, like, it works really well. And like we keep seeing the POV, and we justify these cuts that we do. And later on, it's sort of revealed that, wait, he survived this thing, but he's like he's the like what was the the high tide, what was it called in Creepshow? God damn it.
Something to tide you over?
Something to tide you over. He's the Ted Something Danson? To tide you over, Ted Danson monster at the end of that.
You can't kill us, Richard. We're already dead.
Exactly.
But I do want to bring that up, because that reveal of him looking in the mirror is, again, it's kind of cinematic genius. Because the camera looks down into the mirrored surface and sees the face.
Yeah.
I was like, how the hell did they do that?
And that's, it's pre CG trickery. And like,
exactly.
It had to be like perfect timing and
right,
all that stuff. Yeah, exactly.
Not to mention it's one shot up to then. So if they did mess it up, they had to back him up all the way out of the apartment and do it again, Yeah,
exactly.
Well, I liked that episode.
And it had a little Twilight Zone-y feel, because he's like, what's going on? No one recognizes me. And
right.
Like,
you kind of wanted to have him with the pig nose or something, like the reveal at the.
The eye of the beholder.
Yeah. For those of you at home, I just did a third eye. Yeah.
No, it's like the Norm Macdonald SNL parody. It's like, yeah, but you don't understand. She's hot. I don't get it. Like. No, but she doesn't look anything like us. No, but she's hot. Usually I try to come on with some kind of moral, but you don't understand. She's hot.
That's hilarious.
Oh, that's so good. But anyway, and then this one like takes us through and does that cyclical ending again, sort of like Dead of Night. And like, he sees himself in a reflection that sort of startles him awake. And all of a sudden he's driving again. He's like, I lost control of the vehicle. Luckily nothing happened. And then all of a sudden,
back to the car crash.
They go back to the car crash scene again, which is and
then the little miniature matchbox flies over the
sequence.
Ledge.
It was like quick little cuts and like a lot of sound effects, like snatch or whatever. Like
spin the
anything to declare.
Frame.
Yeah, don't go to fucking England.
Yeah, yeah. I did like the spin of the can. Like they didn't do anything. Like it was just probably somebody in a car going like this a little bit. But because of all the quick cuts and the angles and the push-ins and everything, it just worked.
Yeah, exactly. It had a great little sequence there.
So the Monkey's Paw, or this one was actually that Wish You Were Here is what it's called. And the Monkey's Paw in this episode was actually some sort of looks like an Asian art statuette. It was the inscription at the bottom and was red, but The Monkey's Paw seems to be one of those obligatory anthology episodes that needs to be retold.
Right,
like Twilight
right.
Zone's got them, this one's got it. I think there was an actual Monkey's Paw episode. I know that Jordan Peele's, his production company's named Monkey's Paw, so it's like,
funny.
all this stuff. But I thought that this was a good version of this story. This one, while everything was pretty grounded in this movie, I know there were zombies and everything. It still felt grounded the way it was filmed and all the episodes were. However, this one had more of a supernatural thing. You've got death on a motorcycle following this guy to kill him, and then the level that they go
Ghost Rider,
Ghost Rider, exactly. The level that they go into by the end to wrap everything up. It's one of the best ramparts in this movie, I think, of like over and over, like just terror. She's like, oh, I want him to be here. I want him to be. Then they wheel in a dead body, and it's like, no, I want him to be here right before he died, or before he was in the car crash.
Oh, right.
Well, he died of a heart attack, so he's already dead. Well, I don't want him to ever die again. So the guy wakes up and he's got embalming fluid in him, so he's feeling his face. It
turns into Return of the Living Dead with like they keep cutting him up, and each of the pieces are still alive.
The hand is cut off, and it's just like riling around on him. I mean, it's pretty terrifying, but overall, super effective.
And that one, like, it was interesting because unlike some of the other ones, where it's very clear that sort of we have this, villainous person who gets their comeuppance. We see what makes them villainous in all the other segments.
Right.
In this one, it's just heavily implied because we don't see it.
He's just running out of money.
He's just running out of money. But like what they talk about is that like while he was amassing his huge fortune, that he was a monstrous.
I had to do a
evil
couple. I had to do a couple evil things. Along the way. Sure.
I just had to do
how else do you make money?
Evil to get there. I don't know. It's like
I wouldn't really call it evil as much as I would call it evil.
Yeah. Yeah. And so it's like his evil was sort of off screen, which made it harder to root against him because you didn't quite know what it was. But in any case, it's like it still fits in with a lot of that, a lot of the other tales that we get in this one.
Blind alleys for sure. You definitely see the evil of the. I mean, this guy is a villain from the get-go. The new
the Major Colonel German Shepherd guy,
Shane.
Yeah,
Shane.
Yeah.
But that one had a great ending, and I think Patrick McGee is so creepy.
God.
And he plays blind really well. Even when he like passes the camera, he's just kind of off center, and it's just a really kind great
staring into that nowhere zone.
Exactly.
And in this one you can really, this one and I guess Poetic Justice, you really feel the like how the Brits are able to like turn the screw on you, and you're just like you really want the bad guy to get his comeuppance finally. You know what I mean? And in this one it's like you felt like because it was so short, like they did so much with such little time. It was just the Major Colonel General guy shows up, and all of a sudden he's like, "Oh, look, these guys are eating full hot meals." Hell no.
Yeah,
and
not
then,
on this budget.
The very next scene, it's like it's cold. They're eating thin gruel the next day,
and he's got a 2-inch thick steak in front of him.
Yeah, exactly. He's like sipping port and having a T-bone. A T-bone the size of his forearm. It's just like,
Patrick McGee's great. He's like, we eat gruel while you eat steak. He does it. While you eat this.
Happy with the meal. Oh, that
exactly.
Was,
just eating the spaghetti.
Exactly.
More wine.
Right. Oh my God! I forgot to bring up the guy who looks like Stannis or whatever from Game of Thrones in the first or no in the car crash one.
Yeah,
like it wasn't Stannis. It was Eric from Get Carter.
Yeah.
I've forgotten what your eyes looked like. Piss house in the snow.
Piss house in the snow.
Piss house in the snow.
Oh man, Get Carter's so badass. Most badass movie.
I had almost forgotten what your eyes look like. They're still the same. Piss holes in the snow.
I love the blind alley one because it was like, okay, we turn all the screws. Okay, now it's comeuppance time, and they, they lure the dog. They get him in there.
Starve the dog.
They ambush him. They starve the dog for a couple days while they build the Carnival of Horrors. Like,
welcome to Razorblade Hallway.
and that sequence is so great because it was like, okay, we're taking our time getting him through one tunnel, up the other tunnel, up to the Razorblade tunnel, and and it's like, okay, this is going somewhere. This is going somewhere. We're finally gonna get there, but like, they're taking their time through it to like show how precarious it was getting there. And then all of a sudden, when he has to run away,
is he outrunning this dog
from the German Shepherd and like trying to get back through through the Razorblade Central? Oh boy, yeah, exactly.
It looked painful too, because like it was a really great cut, like because he gives kind of a reaction, a wince, and then you see a little bit of blood on the razor blades. It's like, there's not a whole lot that 3M really pops.
Yeah.
But it's just that it was really well done, and you could feel him walking through the razor blades. Like it was very, very
effective. You could feel him like sweating and hyperventilating through that narrow passageway. Exactly.
Shane?
Yeah.
Shane? That's...
And then when he has to like try to run away from the dog and he like finds the razor blade thing, he's like, what do I do? And like cut to black.
Yeah.
It's like
and that was kind of a consistent ending for all of these, really. It was, even all through the house, it was just kind of a cut to black once the psycho Santa, got his hands around her Joan Collins' neck, cut. Mm-hmm. And then this one was another cut, which, what more do you need? It was almost like you didn't want to see what happened to them because it would have ruined the spine or the mystery of what the spine was.
No, totally. And I think they did such a good job of putting all through the house at the beginning and having that brooch thing be a lingering question mark. Like, okay, well, if she got the brooch earlier, well, then she must have survived. Mm-hmm. And so she got to this place. But like, because of some of those misdirections there, I don't know, maybe you weren't fooled watching it, but like, I kind of didn't know where it was going necessarily. And I feel like they did a pretty good job of being able to get you to then get to that ending.
Mm-hmm.
But before we get to the ending, I do want to talk about Poetic Justice real quick. I
would love to talk Poetic Justice.
Yeah,
this is my favorite episode.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. First of all, I forgot that Peter Cushing was in this movie. Not only does this movie look and feel like a Hammer horror film, which I think I think Atticus was the name of the production company. They were very confused with Hammer a lot of the times because they also Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing and those guys would play in both. But Peter Cushing in this episode, the sweetest old man, plays it beautifully. In real life, his wife had just passed away, so Peter Cushing's wife in real life had passed away.
Oh, shit.
And the character of Grimsdyke, his wife, had passed away. Wow. And so a lot of the emotion that you're seeing on screen is for real.
I did not
brilliantly
know that.
played.
Wow.
Obviously, he's a legend. And this one, talk about comeuppance. And talk about an evil villain that is presented in such a villainous way. This young, I don't know what he is. The homeowners association head?
Okay, so that like, what's interesting is like, okay, so when we start off on this episode, we see stately Wayne Manor, and there's these low shots of this gigantic, beautifully kept 82-room house or whatever, and you think just like Wayne Manor, it's like secluded off in the middle of nowhere, but apparently this place is in a neighborhood.
Right.
And, there's other neighbors around, and then there's one across the street who has a pretty modest house, who is like the gardener or whatever for the rest of the neighborhood. Mm-hmm. And that's the Peter Cushing character. There's like an older dad, like the patriarch of that Wayne Manor house, and then the shitty Bruce Wayne son. And
job.
It's like if Bruce Wayne's parents had lived, he would become this guy, this cruel fucking NIMBY asshole. Wow. Like it's humannextdoor.com. It's like, it's just like he's like head of the neighborhood association. Like, ew, look at the disgusting pores on my block, and I can't trust them, and blah blah. And then he just like spends the entire episode like finding ways to like gaslight and terrorize this Peter Cushing character, this poor guy.
Until he ends up hanging himself.
Until he ends up killing himself. And like, and it was like in these heart-wrenching ways. It was like,
awful.
He calls animal control on him.
Takes away his dogs, yeah.
And the thing that he says while the animal control guys are taking the dogs away, he's like, wait, you can't take my dogs. They're my friends. And you're just like, oh. It's like
hurt.
Right through the heart,
It hurt.
And then he like, oh, who would send me these? Actually, before that, he gets accused of being like, or hinted at, accused of being a pedophile, and like, so all the kids who would like learn gardening from him, like, weren't allowed to come over anymore.
And he'd make them toys or clean up their old toys and fix them.
Right. Right. And like the sweetest guy.
Perfect human. Yeah.
And then he's like, oh, it's Valentine's Day. Who would send me cards? And like he gets like
a stack of them.
A 2-inch thick stack of cards. And he's like, ooh, look at this one. And it's like, roses are red, violets are blue. Oh, that's wonderful. But I hate you because you're a prick or whatever. It's like, oh no. And like, he reads the next one and it's like, you're
they
an
rhymed
asshole.
better in the movie. They rhymed much better in the movie.
No.
No.
Yeah. And like, he reads all these things and it's just, just each one like breaks his heart even further. And then you're right. Like eventually he ends up killing himself. And the shitty Bruce Wayne guy, shows up at his funeral. Is like, well, good riddance to bad rubbish or whatever. And then we get finally the EC Comics, cut to a year later. And we get our,
it's Valentine's Day again.
Yeah.
And Bruce Wayne, prick Bruce Wayne, is throwing away the leftover Valentine's cards. So we just remind the audience as to how long ago this happened. And then A Night Alone, he is visited by Grimsdyke, who is...
Cue the Metallica, and it's like...
Awesome looking zombie, first of all. Great makeup on that. The eyes were gone.
The fingers.
Yeah, excellent. And then the poetry comes back in full circle here for the end, and he's like, whatever, don't play the part, now I have your heart, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. And, the reveal is they open it up and there's a still beating heart on the table.
Right,
So great.
Which the dad, like the dad of the Bruce Wayne guy or whatever.
Thomas Wayne. Yeah.
Yeah, Thomas Wayne finds it the next morning. He's like, no. Right. And which is great because, like, as we find out, it's like with all these stories, this is how each one of these cruel, disgusting people died.
Right.
And
the Crypt Keeper wasn't warning them about stuff. He was just reminding them of stuff.
He was like, yeah, well, just so you know, here's why you're here. Checklist. Lick my pen, check some things off. And you belong here. You belong here. Yep, you too, and everyone else out the door.
You died without repentance.
Yeah. And then the big reveal is that the spine of the story is that they're all been there, waiting their final judgment, and the doors to hell open up, and they all have to cart off into it.
I don't care how cheesy the effect was of that fella falling into the fire. I loved it. You were talking about how each of these episodes kind of take it all the way. The entire movie then takes it all the way. Like, these are the worst possible people. They're going to hell.
Yeah. They're getting exactly what they deserve. Exactly. Yeah. A disgusting end, and then, the eternal end.
Yeah. Just fitting punishment for all of them.
Right. Right. Exactly.
Well, I think we did it.
We did it. We made it through Anthology 2. What are we looking at next week?
Since we didn't get to see Dune in our original triple feature that we wanted to put together, instead we put together Jodorowsky's Dune in place, we get to actually see Dune because it was released. So we're going to be doing a shorter episode. We're bringing back our special guest, Dan, to discuss Dune. This is Denis Villeneuve's Dune that just released, 2 days ago, depending on when people listen to this. Yeah. Pretty recently. So that'll be a shorter episode, but we definitely have to get that in because it's an important film.
Yeah, it'll be kind of an addendum to our
there you go. It's an addendum.
Adapting Dune conversation.
And for our next full episode, we will be taking a look at a stressful Thanksgiving. I love the name of that. We're going to be watching Prisoners, The Ice Storm, and Hannah and Her Sisters. Looking forward to these. I've seen Prisoners, but I haven't seen the other two.
Yeah, well, it's one of those things where it's like, there's a fun way to go with Thanksgiving, and there's a not so fun way.
There's a Grindhouse way of going about Thanksgiving.
we have a theme to maintain here, which is trying to do stressful movies, and
we live on the darker side of life.
Exactly. These are darker and more stressful versions of Thanksgiving, which is going to be perfect for this show.
Perfect. All right. Thank you so much for listening. Please make sure to subscribe and follow us on all the podcasts and social platforms at the Grindhouse Institute. And if you really want to give us a boost, check us out on Apple Podcasts and leave us a rating and review. It helps us to get noticed. Thanks so much, everybody. We will be back next week.
Ciao.
Just love happy endings.